Ladies and gentlemen, my name is D2 Kasui, and I'd like to welcome you all to the View from the Top Executive Leadership Series for Urban Financial Services Coalition, featuring Kala Gibson, Executive Vice President, Head of Business Banking for Fifth Third Bank. And today's presentation is our View from the Top program, and we always have a agenda for the program. So we'll have a welcome, and I ask all of you to go ahead and welcome each other by putting in the chat welcome and sharing your name and where you're calling in from. Then we'll have the introduction of the moderator, introduction of the speaker, then we'll have our conversation, and then we'll have Q&A. And during the Q&A period, you'll have a combination where we'll allow individuals to ask their question in person, or to send their question into the chat. And then we'll have some closing remarks, and then we'll let you get on with the rest of your day. So with that, I will first turn the microphone over to my colleague and the chair of the Urban Financial Services Coalition Programming Committee, Ms. Gail Todd, to share a few words and to introduce our moderator.
Thanks, D2. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. This is Gail Todd with the National Urban Financial Service Coalition, and today's moderator for Breaking Through the Barriers to Success with Purpose with Mr. Gibson is D2 Kasui. As a friendly reminder, this is a Q&A, and we look forward in hearing from you. D2?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Gail. It's always a pleasure to work under Ms. Todd's leadership. She has a vision of bringing to all of you some of the best executives in the country, for them to share their story, share their best practices, and share their insights, so that we can use that information to take our careers to the next level and use that information to inform our community. So with that, we're going to move forward with just a quick networking, which we started already. We'll ask all of you who are on the line and who have the capability, go ahead and share your name and your company and your email address if you so desire. And then share one thing that you are currently excited about right now. What's one thing that you're currently excited about right now? Go ahead and throw that in the chat so people can see the things that are going on from different parts of the country and the things that you're excited about. And it may be an opportunity for you to connect with other people who are excited about the same things that you're excited about. So go ahead and do that in the chat while I am introducing our speaker. Our speaker that we will be having our conversation with is an executive vice president and head of business banking. He oversees strategic planning, operations, sales force, and products for the division. Business banking serves clients with annual revenues up to $20 million across 1,155 banking centers in 10 states. Our speaker joined the Fifth Third in 2011 as a senior vice president and business banking executive for Eastern Michigan. In that role, he was responsible for the performance and strategic sales delivery across 8 counties in southeastern Michigan. Our speaker started his career at Comerica Bank in Detroit. Well, it actually started a little earlier than that. That's where I got a chance to meet him. And he has over 27 years experience in retail, community, and small business banking, middle market, and asset-based lending and credit administration. He earned his BA from Grand Valley State University and an MBA from Michigan State University. And as an active member of his community, our speaker dedicates his time and expertise to a variety of causes, including executive and finance committee member for the Charles H. Wright Museum of African American History, finance member for the board National Underground Railroad Freedom Center, Board of Trustee member for Arts Wade in Cincinnati, member of the Business Banking Executive Circle, and so many other activities that he's been a member and participated on in various leadership roles. Our speaker has also received several awards for his civic and professional contributions, including Fifth Third Bank Leader of the Year, Fifth Third Bank Community Commitment, the Michigan Chronicles Men of Excellence, and Crane's Detroit Business 40 Under 40. And on top of that, he is an amazing husband and a phenomenal father and a member of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated and one of the sons of Urban Financial Services Coalition. Let's give a virtual hand clap to my colleague and friend and fraternity brother, Kala Gibson. Can we get a big hand clap, get some virtual hand claps going? Excellent, 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 excellent. Kalai, how are you this morning?
You know, I'm doing great today. I really appreciate that intro. You know, it's funny, you got to check with my wife and kids on that last part. But no, you know what? I'm really excited about today, D2, because it's always good to come back home. You know, I've really enjoyed watching people come into the chat. And it's really like a blast from the past. So when I think about my career that started in 1991, that's how long I've been actually with the Urban Financial Services Coalition. And I just think about, you said one of the sons, and I'm very proud of that. You know, my time as the president of our Detroit chapter, I was on the board, the national board, ran our 2008 conference. So, right. So no, UFSC, you know, right next to my Alpha brand, I got a UFSC brand. So again, just really excited to be back with family and to talk to everyone. So,
absolutely, and we appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule. We know as you climb the corporate ladder, and especially in this day and time when there's so much going on in terms of the business world, dealing with the pandemic and other things that are going on. We know that your schedule is busy, and so we appreciate you taking time. And we're in the middle of the day, right? So we appreciate that. So before we get into our discussion, you know, why don't you share a little bit about, you know, how things are going with you in the COVID? You know, tell us a little bit about some insights you've kind of learned about yourself during the COVID. And some things that you've probably been able to do, you know, because of COVID that you probably wouldn't have been able to do if this was regular times.
Yeah. Hey, before I jump into that, I do want to make sure I acknowledge our president, President True Love. Really excited that, you know, I love the name. Actually, this time, right, the name like President True Love. And I know she gets that all the time, but I do want to make sure that I acknowledge the great leadership that she's providing for UFSC. So again, really glad to be here. You know, COVID is interesting. This pandemic has been an unbelievable roller coaster ride. So we think about, you know, in March when it hit, and, you know, and I'm thinking not only for my family, right? Because you're thinking about the safety of your family. For my Detroit family that's on the call, we know we got hit pretty hard in Detroit. So it was one of those things that you had to balance even more than ever, the personal side with business, because while family and friends were suffering with COVID, you know, a lot of our customers and even employees as well was having a hard time with this. So what I learned and what I experienced is that all that stuff comes together, right? You can't really separate business and personal, particularly in a crisis, because it all overlaps. And what I've learned about myself and quite frankly about other people is there's a significant amount of resiliency that all of us have, particularly when we go deep. And you also realize how people actually operate in crisis, right? So, you know, I saw folks who kind of went away. I mean, they literally like disappeared, didn't see them. And then you saw some folks who really stood up that you weren't expecting, right? people that were on calls. I mean, we were during PPP, so the Paycheck Protection Program, and my group was leading that. I mean, we were on the call for probably, I mean, to midnight, and we're back on the call again at 7 in the morning, right? And so these folks were grinding it out for a good 45 days. And so it was just this really exciting to see how people stood up. I think for me, what I learned is that what true leadership really is, right? And it's leading from the front. And it's also being able to show empathy, because there were a lot of things that were occurring to people on my team that, you know, I didn't fully understand, but I had to show empathy and be a voice there. And then in the meantime, had to be able to switch right away to leading the team so that we were able to deliver the much needed capital and resources to our customers. So, I mean, it was an unbelievable experience. I learned a ton. I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy, though. I would tell you, I probably aged 20 years in those 6 months. But again, it was one of those experiences that really made me, you know, to be proud of my team. And most importantly, you know, proud of a lot of my friends and colleagues as well. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And that's a good point. You know, leadership is very important. And one of the roles for leaders is to be able to connect and to have sympathy, and at the same time, know that they have responsibilities that have to be taken care of. And so that's something that people learn over time. So let's take a moment and have you share a little bit about, you know, who are your mentors? Who are some of the people that, you know, help prepare you, you know, for these type of opportunities?
Yeah. So let me, again, just talk about kind of my background and how I kind of came up. So I actually started at the bank, like I said, almost 30 years ago as an intern. So there were a lot of people who were coming up and trying to assist the only African-American intern on the west side of Michigan. I mean, I felt like I was the only African-American employee, to be honest with you, at the entire bank at that time. So it was a challenge for sure, but I always go back to a guy. So I was an RM. My first opportunity to be a relationship manager was in Jackson, Michigan. And in Jackson, Michigan, I don't know how many people are familiar with Jackson, Michigan. Jackson, Michigan could be Jackson, Mississippi. I mean, same community, same type of environment. You really felt like you were in the South. And again, was an outsider. I wasn't from Jackson. I moved to Jackson, but they knew, you know, quite quickly that I wasn't from there. And I remember I went out on my first customer call. And I went out and met with this guy, and I get to the office, and he immediately turns around, walks to the back room, and sends somebody else to talk to me, which was his daughter. And his daughter explained to me that he doesn't like Black people, right? And he's not really excited that you're here, right? So of course I'm laughing and saying that, well, Kala Gibson, and he had to be thinking like somebody, Kala Gibson at that, right? But obviously they didn't give him my full name. But he wasn't expecting me. So had the meeting with his daughter. I went back to my boss and said, hey, why didn't you actually assign a racist, right, to my portfolio? And he said, Kala, listen, he said, everybody's not going to like you, and everybody's not going to be about you. And you got to learn how to deal with that and make that work. And he said, he called me, the customer called him as well. He said, he told him the same thing. You guys got to figure out how to make it work. He said, if you don't want to make it work to the customer, you can go find another bank, right? And and that changed me, because I realized right away that you can't go back and cry about the fact that people don't like you, particularly based on your skin color, and that you got to work through it. And the other piece was that he was very supportive of that I would get through that, and that one day I would be a senior vice president, that he saw that in me, and that I just needed to stick with it. And I did stick with that. And eventually, interesting enough, that customer became a good friend. And when I actually, about a year and a half later, when I got married, he was the first person to send me well wishes, and actually sent all of my place settings. He bought every single one of my place settings, right? So it's to the point of, how do you actually change things and change people's minds? But you also need that support. And so that was one of my favorite leaders and mentors. Didn't look like us, but someone who took me to the side. And then of course I have to give a really shout out to I never, when you think about your mentors, I've had a group of people. It's never been like one person. A lot of them are on the call. I mean, shoot, D2, I think about you, right? I mean, peer mentors, right? I think about Juliana Perry, who's in Detroit. I don't know if she's on, right? Kathy Lewis, who was a president, right? UFSC. These are all people who put their arms around me early on and have really guided me through my career. So, I mean, the list goes on and on.
Absolutely. So, the point is that, there's a benefit from accessing wisdom, right? And there's a benefit from having a coalition of mentors, right? That can give you different things. And so those of you who are on the line, if you've had someone that's been a powerful mentor for you, go ahead and put their name in the chat, give them a little recognition. We all need to have someone to inspire us and see the best in us. So go ahead and do that so that person can get a little love and a little excitement, knowing that you appreciate the hard work that they give. So Kala, you and I met.
AD2,
Sure.
can I make this one more comment on the mentorship piece?
Sure.
I think the other piece that's important, because again, these are mentors and these are people who have taken me to the side, but I think it's really also important to talk about those advocates and those people who were willing to fight for me when I wasn't able to fight for myself. And so a guy I want to give a shout out to, some people on the call may know him. His name is Maurice Shane. Maurice passed away a couple years ago, one of our frat brothers. The biggest advocate that I had at the bank was Maurice Shane. And Maurice Shane was the guy that whenever someone, I mean, I give a perfect example. Again, I was one of the only African-American leaders there in Detroit in our middle market group. I might have been the only one. And I remember I ran into some challenges with our leader, right? Who had said some racist comments at the loan committee table. And I went to several people that addressed this and no one would address it. But Maurice, I told Maurice about what happened, and he literally flipped out and called our CEO directly and said, hey, this is what our employees are experiencing and you need to fix this. And he did. And Maurice didn't have to do that, right? Because, this individual was extremely powerful in the organization. But Maurice took his influence and his power to right a wrong, and he did that constantly. You think about Maurice Shane, Linda Forte, Rhonda Davenport, who's down in Dallas right now running retail for Comerica. I mean, these are all people who were fighting on my behalf and a lot of the folks on the phone behalf.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent point. And so one of the things that often we like to point out to people, there's a difference between mentorship and sponsorship. The sponsorship is the individual who has influence and who has power in the organization, who has, a seat at the table or access to people with the seat at the table. And one thing we learned from the Federal Reserve Economic Summit from last year is that person wears your t-shirt in the room, right? That's the person who, oh, something comes up, I want to recommend so-and-so. Something comes up, this person will be good. Or if there's an issue that those person will go, you're not there yourself, but they're there to, sponsor those things for you. So having a combination of good mentors and then having people to be advocates for you, can really add to a person's career. And so while we're talking about that, that just really reminds me that, you and I met, in Richmond, Virginia, at the time he was working for a financial institution. And, since then, you've gone on and done some really awesome things. If you had to point out, one thing that was the key that really helped you to take your career to the next level, what would be, one or two things that, really from that moment in Richmond shot you to the EVP position?
Yeah, so you know what it was. It's funny, and I love my time in Richmond. I mean, Richmond is one of my favorite cities. I love going back, but it wasn't in my plan. So I had a plan that I wrote down in 1995 that was, hey, I want to lead a major group in 10 years, right? And so I wrote down all the things that I had to do. And actually I went forward and said, okay, if I want to do this in 2005, or I want to have this position, what are the prerequisites, right, for me to be able to get that position? And I started to work my way back. And so that was in 97, 98, D2, when we first met. And I would tell you that, I was looking at what was going on I was at Nations Bank, Bank of America at the time. And I was like, this isn't in my plan, right? This is not going to get me to where I need to be in 2005, right? So, so I made the move back to Comerica, back to Detroit, and resurrected the plan. And when I look back on it, I mean, I executed that plan to a T. I mean, it was a 2-year increment plan. One of those things was to go back and make sure that I received my MBA. So I did that while I was, having my firstborn and trying to work a full-time job. But it was also around the different type of roles that I wanted, right? And I wasn't able to get that role at Bank of America and Nations Bank. And again, I love that organization as well, but it just wasn't in the cards for me. And I tried really hard to make sure that could be in my plan. It wasn't, so I made a pivot, moved back to Detroit, and continued to work on that. And it's funny, sometimes plans don't necessarily work when you want them to work, but I would tell you that 2005, I was named the senior vice president running one of our groups at Comerica, so it actually worked, right? And that's the advice. And then I did another 10-year plan from 2005 to 2015, which was that I wanted to run a major line of business, preferably small business banking at a major institution, and worked that plan as well. And part of that plan was leaving Comerica and going to Fifth Third in 2011, and then answering the phone call from our CEO in 2013, which was, hey, I want you to come to move to Cincinnati, Ohio, and run business banking. I told him no at first because I didn't want to move. But then, my wife kind of popped me upside the head and said, that's crazy. I mean, this is your dream job. This is what you've been working for. So, get your butt out of Detroit and move to Cincinnati. So a lot of it was just around executing on that plan and having a little bit of luck there too as well.
Absolutely. Well, a lot of times people say that, luck is preparedness, meeting opportunity. And so what I hear what you're saying is really the key is to begin with the end in mind, to have some type of idea for your career, and then start working that plan, and that the plan doesn't always work out the way you intend, and to be willing to make the adjustment. So could you talk a little bit about that? Because sometimes, people will take the time to make a plan, but then they have a hard time making the adjustment.
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because the other piece too that's important. So, those 20 years of planning, it didn't go perfect for sure, right? And a lot of times people think that a plan requires you to go straight up, right? That is just a staircase and you're going straight up. And that wasn't the case at all. I mean, I made some moves that were sideways, backwards, all types of things, right, to get to that end. And to your point, it wasn't necessarily during that planning piece about the position that I was trying to get. It was about the skills and competencies that I needed, right? So there were times that I made either a lateral move or in some cases a step back in order for me to be able to get the skills and experience that I thought was going to be necessary in order for me to be able to move forward. So I give you an example. I was on the credit side in middle market, part of the leadership team in middle market. And I made a lateral move to small business. Now, for those who are in middle market or commercial, when you go to small business, they call it the TD. And I remember someone said, they say you're going backwards. And I didn't view it that way. I viewed it as part of my mission again. I needed to get back on the line. And I wanted to be in this space where I could have impact, right? And help my community. So, it's not always going to be perfect, right? And there's some pivots that I had to make. But it was always along the lines of, how do I improve my skills, get the right experience, my competencies? How do I expand my network? And it wasn't necessarily about titles and positions. So.
Absolutely. And that's an excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up, Kala. Because as people craft their careers, a lot of times people are chasing grades and chasing titles, and they're not looking at, where are my gaps? Where do I ultimately want to be? Which path leads me to that? What opens up? And I have to make the adjustment for that. But that is part of the game, right? That's part of the game of position yourself, asking yourself what is actually needed for where I want to be in in the future, and then getting those opportunities and then capitalizing on those opportunities when you actually did it. So what I like to, and to our point, I like to pivot for a second to the moment you got that role of executive vice president, head of business banking for Fifth Third Bank. After you realized, what was the first thing you did?
All right, so in full transparency, the first thing I did when I was notified that I've been promoted to executive vice president was I looked at my boss and said, what took you so long? Just to be honest, right? There wasn't I literally didn't do backflips. I just looked at it and said, it's about time. Because, so my story is this, and again, I'm with family, so I'm gonna talk about this. So I was promoted to head of business banking. Juliana and Tanya, they're on the phone, they know this. I was promoted to head of business banking September 20th of 2013. But I retained my senior vice president title. They didn't promote me to executive vice president then. And at the time, the person that I replaced was an executive vice president, right? So I actually asked for that title. I said, well, hold on. The guy before me was an executive vice president, so I'm taking over that role. I should get that, right? No, the job is a little bit different. Let's see what you can do, right? Okay, so then over the next 2 to 3 years, I grow the business and do all the things I need to do and delivered on every single metric that they asked me to deliver on, doing things in the community, speaking on their behalf, and I still didn't get it, right? So I pressed hard. So every single review that I had, so that's the mid-year and the annual review, I would come in and say, all right, so when we're going to change that S to an E, right? And it was always, was this, is that, and this. So finally, I tell you, there was an org announcement and somebody was getting promoted, right, to executive vice president, one of my peers. And I said, you know what, enough is enough, right? And my boss looked at me and said, well, you didn't let me finish, you've been promoted too. And that's when I said, yeah, it's about time. It's about time. So again, it's that piece of, nobody ever gives us anything, even when we're supposed to get it, right? And I tell you, it was frustrating those years running around and speaking on behalf of the organization. And in some cases, somebody sitting right next to me was an executive vice president, and I run a bigger business and doing more. But you push through that and you just continue to perform and deliver and hold your head high, but keep asking, right? Because the one thing I wasn't going to do, I wasn't going to stop asking. I told him, I said, I would have came every week, keep asking for this, right? Because I earned it and I deserved it. And so yeah, that's the first thing that happened. Then I called my wife and my mom.
No.
But what was exciting though? I tell you what's funny. And Beatrice, I think, is on the line and she'll remember this. I was bitter for a week, right? I was pissed about it because I should be really excited about this, right? But it's man, it was such a battle. And Beatrice was one of the folks who's like, man, you kind of need to move on and get over that and celebrate. And I remember going to Detroit. I can't remember what I was in Detroit for, and she threw me a big surprise party. All of my family, friends were there, UFSC members. Walter Elliott, for those who know Walter. Walter's one of our pioneers in the industry, came up and gave me a kiss. I warned everybody, I said, Walter's the only one in the room who can give me a kiss other than my mama. But that's when you need your friends, and Beatrice is my sister, to actually say, Kala, get it together. You need to celebrate, and we're going to celebrate with you. So it was good. It was
absolutely, good. Absolutely. No, that's excellent. And so while we're on that point, can you really talk about the importance of having a professional family, a professional network, and how you've utilized that to, push through the tough points and get access to wisdom?
What's interesting about this, and this is why I love us as a group of people, right? Because the amount of people that pray for me is incredible, right? I was on the call this morning, and she said, Kala, she said, I can feel you're a little tired, and I'm gonna pray for you, right? Mm-hmm. And so, having a professional group of friends there but also having praying friends is really important. And I told her, you know, because she had a little like, you know, little thing in her voice as well. It seemed like she was having a tough time. And I told her, I said, sis, I'm gonna pray for you too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would tell you that having a network of folks who really genuinely love and care for each other and that are rooting for each other in the background. You know, Juliana, I can't see you, Juliana. And I remember just one day out the blue, I just called Juliana just to check on her, right? And it was great for us to catch up, right? And I called her at a time that was a good time, right? But you were going through some stuff and I was there. And that's the thing. And people call me all the time and catch me at that moment and they're able to cheer me up. So I think organizations like UFSC that's allowed me to build the network that I have across the country. I see Deborah Broston on the phone. So, hey, Deborah, you know, it's all these folks that you have, that you've worked with, that you've been in the trenches with. They pray for you and I pray for them as well. So I just think it's critical that you have that army behind you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, for those of you who have a strong professional family or organizations that support you, go ahead and put the organization name in the chat. You know, it's very important to everyone's career and anyone who wants to have influence is that you can't do it all by yourself. And you need to be able to have the support of other folks. So Kala, one of the things that we would like to talk about is why is it important for professionals seeking the C-suite know their purpose and how can knowing their purpose help them overcome some of the barriers to corporate success?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. So again, just a background. So one of the things, and people who are on the call who know me and heard this story, I apologize, you're going to hear it again, which is that the only thing that I've really wanted to be in my entire life and is a banker. I actually gave this speech some years ago when I won Banker of the Year, UFSC Banker of the Year in Detroit, right? The Aubrey Lee Award, Aubrey Lee being another one of our great pioneers. And the reason I wanted to be a banker was because of my community. I remember seeing branches close. And then once those branches closed, I saw businesses leave. And it just, you just saw the entire community deteriorate once that branch left, right? So, you know, I kind of made a commitment at that point because I remember how I felt seeing that I want to be a part of the solution versus the problem. So then everything I did since I was in high school was to deliver on that purpose, which is to be in a position that I can actually make impact so that we're not closing branches in minority communities, that we're making sure that we're providing wisdom and advice so they can have access to capital, access to information so that they can grow their businesses. And so how that helps when you're making a climb is that when you hit those walls and those obstacles and those barriers, if you remember what your true purpose is and what you're here on this earth to deliver, you can get through that stuff, right? I mean, there's so many times where I'm banging my head up against a wall and it feels like I'm not going to get through, but then I'm always able to come back and realize what my purpose is in life. And my purpose is to make sure that I have an impact on as many people as I can, particularly as it relates to financial services, right? I mean, that's the reason I joined UFSC, right? Because, you know, our mission was to make sure that we educated people on this industry and brought more folks that look like us in the industry because, you know, I felt and everyone else on this call felt that was the way we're going to have change. If more people look like us, right, at the table to make decisions, we can do that. So, you know, going back to this whole COVID thing, again, this is the hardest I've ever worked in my life, right? I mean, it challenged me to the end. But the one thing that always got me through was that this is what God put me on this earth to do. This is what my purpose is. This is what everything that I've done over the last 30 years to prepare for. So I'm not going to fail, right? And I'm going to push through for the folks that work for me every day or I work with and for our customers. So that's kind of your foundation, that purpose piece. It is so critical. It's the most important thing, I think, to us being able to continue to push forward.
Absolutely. Well, Kala, you're one of the unique people, right? Because a lot of people don't grow up. So I'm like, oh, you know, when I was small, you know, I want to be a lawyer, you know. Some people say, oh, you know, I want to, you know, Venus and Serena Williams, dad says, okay, they're going to be tennis stars, right?
Right.
But someone says, oh, I want to grow up and be a banker. That is a unicorn. So what do you say to folks who are still trying to find their purpose?
Yeah. And I would tell people, again, I'm lucky and blessed that I found that purpose early on. I mean, I might have been 8. That was really young, right? And sometimes that helps, right? Because you find your purpose, then you're like there, right? You're heading in that path your entire life. What I tell people, it's never too late. It's never too late to find your purpose. And the way I define that, it's like, what gets you up out of bed every morning, right? Because there's days, you don't want to get up, right? You just want to lay there, right? And lay in your own problems, right? But when you have purpose, that's what gets you up every morning, right? To go to work and do whatever it is that you do every day. So I would say, if you don't have that purpose, just listen to what it is that guides you every day. What gets you out the bed? And if what you're doing today doesn't get you out the bed, you may want to do something different. Life's too short. We got to do what we enjoy. We got to do what we love. Everything has to be kind of in alignment. And I know that, I'm in alignment. I mean, folks who know me and work with me, I'm excited every day. I wake up every morning, man, ready to run, right? And it's because I'm living my purpose. I love what I do. I don't want to do anything else. I got an opportunity. I'll share this with you guys. I've had a couple opportunities to do other stuff at the bank and things that actually may be like a step up, right? But I've turned those down because, I've said, I don't think that's going to get me up in the morning. I don't think I'm going to be excited about that. And I got to do what I feel is going to help me be able to contribute in the best way. And so sometimes you do have to turn some things down as well. So.
Absolutely. It's often said that the enemy of the best is the good. And so it sounds like you've figured out what's the best for you so that it enables you to say no to other good things.
Right. And say yes to the right things. The other piece too. Right.
Yes.
Say yes to the right things.
Absolutely. Well, and you brought up the point about alignment. Can you talk a little bit more about, what alignment looks like, at your level and what type of things that you are aligning with your purpose?
Yeah, so one of the things that I talk a lot about, particularly to some of our young folks that we're mentoring them, is just about being your authentic self. So being who you are. When you try to be something that you're not and try to have two sides, you got the business side and the personal side, and you got the fight the power side, and you got the I don't want to fight the power side. You'll go just crazy, right? You'll just literally just explode. So for me, alignment is, again, being my authentic self, speaking up when I feel that there's a need for something to be said, not shying away from it, right? Going through this time, social injustice, right? There's been opportunities for people not to say anything, right? And just to be on the sidelines. And, I've said, hey, no, I'm going to bring you guys into my personal world, talking about my colleagues, right? And I shared this personal story with them. I wrote an article. Actually, I just wrote it for myself because I was just trying to get my feelings out on how it felt to be a Black man here in America and to have 2 future Black men, right, in my household. Mm-hmm. And I had to share that with people. I had to bring them into my personal world so that they would have some perspective. And I think that alignment for me is this, making sure that, what they see is what they get, and that I don't have to change who I am, and that my path continues to be straight. So as long as I'm showing up that way, I never have to worry about being out of an alignment, right?
Absolutely.
I hope that makes sense, but it's kind of my weird way of looking at it.
No, it's not weird at all. And, and it really comes, that's the power of authenticity. Once you have a strong foundation in who you are, whose you are, and what your purpose is, then it's easy to make those decisions. And you don't have to be a chameleon, right? You don't have to waste a lot of energy trying to impress other people or keep up with things that you're not, because you start working within your own power. So
Yeah.
I thought that made an excellent point. And so while we're on the thing about social justice and the challenges facing African Americans in this country, how have you been able to balance being racially specific and inclusive, as you guide your area of the bank and in your community dealings?
That's a tough question. And I would tell you guys, again, sharing with family, it's scary, right? Because what I've said on numerous calls is that this is about Black folks right now, right? Because trust me, there's been things that we've said as an organization and things that we're pushing, and people have called and said, hey, what about us? And I've said that in this moment, right now, right, we need to focus on Black folks, right? And so, and that's hard because you don't know what the blowback is going to be, right? Because what I don't want to do, first of all, I don't want to lose allies, right? Because we're all in this together. And I don't want to ostracize somebody because of that. But what I try to do is explain the differences, right? So I give an example. We talk about people of color, and we look at metrics, right? At different organizations. A lot of times you can check the box on people of color, but then African Americans are still like struggling, right? Yeah. That we're still not in that big group of people of color, right? And so what I've tried to say is that for this moment, right, I want to be specific about African Americans and what do we do to help us. And it's a balancing act, D2. It's hard. A lot of times I have to have, side conversations with people to assure them that I'm not forgetting about them. I don't think that their causes are important, but right now what's going on is it's just really critical that we focus on what's occurring with African Americans right now. We just have to, and that's always been the case. I mean, everyone who knows me, I'm unapologetically Black, right? I never shy away from that, and I'm always going to fight for us first. But it's trying to make sure that fighting for us doesn't mean that I'm not fighting for you as well, and that we're not all in this together. And sometimes that's hard to explain to people, and it takes a side conversation. But I just think right now we just have to make sure that we're focused on this and get this, at least get it on the right path, right? It's going to take years. I mean, we didn't get there overnight, obviously, right? So it's going to take us some time. But it is going to take all of us kind of, coming together to make this happen.
Absolutely. And it's never been easy, right? And that's why I really appreciate and have so much respect for you as a leader, Kala, is that, leaders go ahead and have those, tough conversations, right? Because it takes some energy to say, not leave people there, right? Leave people with, whatever their impression is. And it's that extra conversation that says, well, let's talk about this a little more, maybe not in a bigger form, where I can, clearly communicate what I'm trying to get across to you. And at the same time saying that I value you too, right? And so I think that is an excellent leadership strategy and an excellent way to lead.
Yeah, and I will say this too, D2, before we move to the next one, is that I've been really amazed and hopeful on the feedback that I've received from people on my team, throughout the bank, throughout the industry, that people are standing up, and they don't necessarily look like us, but they're standing up now and saying, hey, I'm gonna be an ally, I'm gonna be part of the solution. And particularly at the bank here, they're doing it with their actions, which I greatly appreciate. So again, I've been, surprised to the point that sometimes, you get emotional about that, right? I went to a peaceful protest about a month ago. I live in a community that is only probably like 20 Black families, right? And my wife and I teased each other and said, there's gonna be 20 of us there. And it was almost 1,000 people there. Now the 20 Black folks were there, the families were there, but it was other folks, and they were screaming and yelling, Black Lives Matter, they had signs. And I didn't say a word the whole march, because I was like, I don't have to say anything. These people are fighting for me, right? And speaking up for me. And that was amazing. That was an amazing moment for me. And like I said, I got emotional. My kids looking at me like, Dad, what's wrong? And I was like, I didn't expect this. I did not expect this. So I'm like, hey, let's take this. Let's take this momentum we have, right, to make a better America, right, and a better world for each other. So it's been an unbelievable journey, and I'm looking forward to where we actually end up landing on this one.
Absolutely. And it's a special time. I mean, people say that we've been here before. I don't think we've ever been in the middle of a pandemic, have the type of things going on. And I think there's a new level of consciousness that is going on. So, I want to get to one or two questions in the audience. But how do you think we ride that wave? How do we take advantage of the moment now to kind of move the ball forward?
Yeah, one of the things that I stress with the organization, part of Fifth Third, is that we have to put laws in place versus executive orders, right? So, executive orders are things you put in place, and then when the new executive shows up, it goes away. What we're learning right now is that it's extremely difficult to turn back a law, right? Extremely difficult. So my goal is that we're putting policies and procedures and things in place that are not short-term fixes, but they're long-term fixes, so that we don't have this problem again. Because I think in the past, that's what's happened. It's always been swift, actions to get to something, and it never stays, right? Because we're doing executive orders. New CEO comes in, somebody else comes in, and they just reverse everything that we've worked really hard to do. So my goal is to make sure that we're putting things in that can't be reversed, that's cultural, and that people are held accountable for not adhering to the policies and procedures and the metrics that we put up to actually succeed.
Absolutely. So we're going to go through some of these questions really quick. Kala, man, the time has gone by so fast. So here's one question. As a senior leader, how do you learn more? How do you lean more in the direction of technical leadership and or adaptive leadership, and why? As a senior leader, do you lean more in the direction of technical leadership and or adaptive leadership, and why?
Yeah, so I'm more of an adaptive person, right? So I'm not your technical textbook leader, right? I follow, the pulse of my team. I try to listen as much as I can. And I try to be as flexible and agile as possible, because again, we're living, and I've used this word before and people have heard me talk about this, in this volatile and uncertain, ambiguous world, right, that we live in. And you can't be a technical leader, right? You can't be a textbook leader when it comes to the environment that we're in right now. And quite frankly, just the environment of competing in corporate America, right? You have to be flexible, agile, adaptable. You have to be continuously learning and reading your audience and your team, understanding, looking around corners and being able to anticipate the next thing that's going to happen. The folks who are stringent to, well, let me go back to my technical book and what do I do in this situation? They're moving too slow. And if you have it as part of your being, that you're listening, that you're being flexible, you're challenging the status quo and looking for opportunities to learn, that's the best way to lead, because then you're learning and you're leading together. You're not leading necessarily like, hey, I'm pushing everybody, right? We're kind of walking together because we're learning together.
Absolutely. Great. Next question. What would you give, what recommendation would you give to a seasoned professional who's looking to get a mentor?
Yeah, I think that, in the past, we've always looked at mentors as being people either at our level, even above, maybe they're even older. One of the things that I do now in my current life, right, is that I work with a lot of young folks who mentor me and tell me where I'm off a little bit, right? I just met with a young man yesterday, and again, I laughed at the end. I said, man, you did more helping me than I was helping you, right? So I guess I would say that mentors can come from anywhere. And it doesn't necessarily have to be someone like you're seasoned, but it doesn't have to be someone that's seasoned. It could be unseasoned, right? And they'll give you some perspective that you didn't have. Because everything is about, when you think about the end of the day, the reason why you have mentors, they provide perspective, right?
Yes.
And they give you advice and show you some things that maybe you don't see. So they don't necessarily have to be seasoned. They can be, again, unseasoned. They can be 25 years old, right? 13 years old, whatever, right? Whatever works.
There you go. Look, however you can get the info, right?
That's right. That's right.
Absolutely. So if you had one thing that you, one bit of advice that you could give your younger self, what would it be?
So Gail talked about this earlier before you guys all jumped on, and I agree. It's the whole thing about, you know, being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And folks, again, have heard me say that over and over, but if I look back, you know, I didn't start really doing that until probably my mid-20s, right? Where I kind of, the light bulb went off that, Kala, you got to push yourself to be uncomfortable, because I was always trying to go the other route. Like I had my plan, but I was like, can I go this way? And people were like, no, you don't want to go that way. That way's too easy. You got to go the hard way, right? You got to do this the hard way. So if I could tell my younger self, particularly my 18-year-old self, right, I would have pushed myself to be more uncomfortable, because that's how we get stronger, right? It's like working out, right? You work out, you tear the muscle down to get stronger, you get stronger, right? It's the same thing. You just gotta get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Absolutely, absolutely. Kala, our time has gone by so quickly. You know, we could go on and chat for another hour or two, but I want to be respectful of your time and respectful of the time of the people on the call. So thank you so much for sharing your insights with all of us. I'm sure we'll have another opportunity to do it again. We do have the Urban Financial Services Coalition National President on the line. Ms. Truelove, would you like to say a few remarks?
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity to do that. Kala, I am so proud of you. Congratulations on your promotion to Executive Vice President. I think that is awesome. And you know, I really appreciate you saying that you have to ask for what you know you deserve, because I find myself saying to my superior all the time, when? I've been in this industry for 44 years. When am I going to be promoted to even an SVP? So thank you for pointing that out again today. We are definitely in uncomfortable times, and this is a very uncomfortable situation for all of us. We're dealing certainly with COVID, racism, and inequalities. They are still there. I am so thankful that I have the Urban Financial Services Coalition family to help me. I think that we all should continue to be superheroes, and we should all be uncomfortable, because we have got to say what has to be said at this time. The choices, of course, that we make determine who we are. And one of the things that we definitely have to do is we got to vote. November the 3rd is coming up. We are 47 days, 13 hours, and 38 seconds counting down to the date and time that we need to vote. I encourage and beg you guys to please get out there and change what's going on, because if we don't do it now, when are we going to do it? So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you for my Urban Financial Services family that's on the call today. You all are all awesome. D2, I could never say enough about how awesome you are for putting things together with Gail Todd as a program chairperson. You all are phenomenal, and I will not ever leave a call, Kala, without giving kudos to my Vice President, Madam Deborah Bronston, because you know we peanut butter and jelly. So
peanut butter and jelly. I was trying to think of how to call you guys that. It's been this way for years. So I love you guys, man. I really do.
You know it, Kala. We met years ago, and I think that you have certainly climbed that ladder, and I am just aspiring still before I hit the age of 70 and say goodbye. I've got to do some things that you're doing. So congratulations to you. Thank you all. Please visit our website, www.ufscnet.org. And thank you for allowing me a few minutes to just say a few words. I love you guys.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ms. Truelove, President Truelove. We appreciate you. Just a couple of quick announcements. Urban Financial Services Coalition, we will continue to have events. We're going to actually continue the conversation with Fifth Third Bank. We're going to do a Who's Hiring Now session on September 30th. So watch your email box. We'll send you some information for those of you who are looking for job opportunities. President Truelove already talked about voting. Please, please, please get out and vote. This is a family affair, a community affair. Do not miss the opportunity. If you're voting by mail, please vote early. You know, get your ballot in early so that it will make sure that it gets there in time. This is not one of those times we want to wait to the last minute. So be on top of that. If you're not a member of Urban Financial Services Coalition, we encourage you to come and join this professional family. We would love to be your professional family. And so you can do so. We'd love to get people connected in Detroit, in other parts of the city, other parts of the nation. This family has no limit, and we will continue to grow our influence. And lastly, I want to thank all of you who are able to join the call. I want to encourage you to be a river and not a reservoir. What does a reservoir do? It keeps all the information and all this stuff to itself, and then things just die. What does a river do? It takes all the stuff and it pushes it out, and everywhere it goes, it turns things green. So your money gets better, your relationships get better, your love life gets better, your romance gets better, you know, your community gets better. So take the information shared today and share with others. So we'll close out by everybody unmuting themselves and saying goodbye and thanking Kala for his wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Kalai.
Hey, thanks everybody. It was so great to see you guys.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
Good seeing you.
Bye.